You know, on Monday, the Republican convention starts in Cleveland, and already this week, Republicans are shaping their platform and finalizing the rules. It promises to be fascinating, with the Dump Trump group still trying to think of a last-minute way to block Donald Trump's nomination. The Democrats, they're watching this too, as this week Bernie Sanders gave his tepid support to Hillary Clinton. You know, this has been a very interesting week, also coming off of everything that we have just talked about as well. And there's some new polls out that have tightened the race significantly. We'll get to that. But I want to start off with the convention, because Nolan, you are going to Cleveland and you're going to be there all week.
He's going to the parties at least.
Well,
if I get to him.
He'll really have a finger on the pulse of what's happening at the convention.
I'll FaceTime you from the Leonard Skinner concert.
Please do. Please do.
That's something, that's a reality show waiting to happen. Nolan goes to the convention. So why don't you go ahead and give us an idea of how you think this is all shaping up?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of question marks about next week, both inside and outside the convention hall. I do believe the Dump Trump movement has petered out. I think it'll get a last test over the next couple of days in the Rules Committee.
Why do you think it petered out?
Well, it didn't get the sort of leadership support it would have needed to prevail. I mean, you had the leaders of the party didn't get behind it, or not enough of them, and not enough money got behind it. And it's just not going to happen. I think, you know, I was part of that Dump Trump crowd, but we've lost. And I think there's going to be one last gasp. So the challenge for the party inside that convention, and if you talk to Republican leadership, is to come out of there united in some form. And if you can't unite people behind the candidate fully, then you have to at least unite them behind the party, because they're very worried about what's going to happen down ballot if this feud, if this split is still there coming out of Cleveland.
You've been to how many conventions now?
These next two will be my 10th, 9th and 10th, I think.
And so going into this, I know you prepare always every time that you go. What is your, I guess, your feeling going into this? Because everyone I talk to, they're like, well, this is going to be crazy, or this is, you know, this is amazing. But kind of give me what your gut sense is of what you're going to see in terms of, have you ever seen any feeling like this coming out of the conservative movement?
Or on the Democratic side, either one. I've never seen an election season like this. Normally you go into convention wondering what in the heck you're going to write about, because they're all so prepackaged and ready to deliver. And, you know, they go in with the goal of having no news made at the convention. And this time, you know, you don't know what's going to happen on the streets in either place. You've got a lot of people talking about Cleveland. My experience with conventions is that more protesters show up for Democratic conventions. I mean, they have a larger fringe, you know, with expectations of the party that they feel aren't met, and so you get a lot of activity in a normal year. This year, will the Sanders, these disappointed Sanders folks show up and mess things up? Will the anarchists who show up every time, everywhere, be in larger force? Will Black Lives Movement come out and disrupt things in the streets, either in Cleveland or in Philadelphia? So this time you don't know whether what happens outside the convention hall is going to overwhelm or grind to a halt what goes on inside.
I was just going to say, there's only so much of the Republicans' control at this point, Stephen. But if you are part of the Republican Party, what would you say that you have to show the rest of America? Because the knock has been the Republicans are only getting white male voters right now, that you've got to reach out to Latino voters and you have to reach out to women. So as a Republican Party as a whole, what do you have to give off this week
So in any presidential campaign after the primaries, you only get a certain number of opportunities as the candidate and the party to have national attention, right? Everybody's attention all at once to make your case to the voters. One is, of course, your convention. The other two or three are the whatever debates they decide to have in the fall. If you don't take advantage of those, you can't win in many instances. And for Donald Trump, who already starts out, as you point out, behind with important constituencies that nobody can win the presidency without significant support from, that doubles the stakes next week. It makes the potential chaos at the convention more dangerous and damaging to his effort. I mean, you think about if you have this sort of fight at the Republican convention and then unity at the Democratic convention the next week, what the polls will look like in early August when the Democrats, if the Democrats get their act together and the Republicans look chaotic.
Yeah, but
So
that's a big
it's
if.
important. It's important for the Republicans to get their act together. How important is the VP pick for Trump? Because he's supposed to announce it Friday.
I'm never a big
think that ever
believer.
makes a big
I think the only times that it makes a difference is when you get it completely wrong, as McCain did with Sarah Palin. I think if you pick a standard issue Republican or a standard issue Democrat, if it's Tim Kaine, if it's Mike Pence or Newt Gingrich. Gingrich might be a little distracting, but it doesn't matter that much. This is all about the candidate. And you talked about white male voters. I think Hillary Clinton's instincts would have gone to a Hispanic or a minority running mate. But that's a party, just as the Republicans have trouble with minorities, this is a party that's losing white male voters, and that's not an insignificant voting group. And you can't simply write them off and say, well, they don't matter. They could cause her, losing that group could cause, particularly the union members, and the party has lost a good number of its blue-collar base.
Yeah. Democrats haven't won that demographic since the early 60s. The number's been around 34%, right? Bill Clinton got 34% of the white male vote. Barack Obama, in both elections, got those same numbers. She doesn't have to do any better than that.
She can't do much worse.
She can't do worse.
No, and she can't be too pleased with a lot of the new polls that are coming out. An NBC poll shows that Ohio is in a dead heat.
Yeah, right.
The CBS poll, New York Times poll out this morning shows in general that race is a dead heat. And Bernie Sanders, while he was like, I'm for Hillary, it was like he was.
Yeah, you
it was uncomfortable.
You still have a real problem on that side of the ledger, getting everybody under the same flag, right, and saying we're all gonna go together after Donald Trump.
And if she goes to her convention and pulls too far left to get those Sanders voters, then she's losing a lot of the independence that she has to have to win this thing. I wouldn't pay too much attention to the horse race polls right now. This isn't a popular vote election. These are Electoral College elections.
Well, which I think, but it was also interesting because it was coming off of the no charges, no indictment for Hillary Clinton, and it does speak to the thought that people have in terms of her trustworthiness and that sort of thing. So that's why I think some of these polls are significant.
Well, I mean, and that's not. I don't think those issues are going to go away, and so
but you still have
she's got to.
Yeah, I mean, this is an anomalous election in terms of polls. You look at a state like Utah being within 10 points, that's craziness for Republicans. You look at Arizona and North Carolina being in play, those are solidly Republican.
You still have a lot of key battleground states in play according to these polls, so I'm not sure anybody can make.
And we'll see just how much these conventions are going to make a difference. All right, guys, that is going to do it. That's going to do it for MiWeek. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, Nolan, he'll be at the convention next week in Cleveland, and he'll hook up with us on the next MiWeek.